A crisis in East Central Spokane, a homeless encampment known as Camp Hope, remains despite efforts to find solution. Drugs, crime, and trash now creeping into surrounding neighborhoods.
You're driving into Spokane, Washington, and what do you see? That's what you see. Does that represent Spokane? I don't think so.
We're all tired of it. It's got to be gone.
Frustration among neighbors and conflicting plans between the city and the state. Now a looming deadline is putting pressure on the situation.
The city's not hostage. The city needs to take care of its citizens.
We're digging deeper and asking the hard questions about the approach to this escalating crisis.
Why do you think we're still having this conversation then, almost 10 months later? That's a good question. That's a good question.
Tonight in a KREM 2 Plus special, how we got here and where we're headed next. Hi everyone, thank you for joining us here on KREM 2 Plus. I'm Whitney Ward. All eyes lately have been on that homeless encampment near I-90 in Freya in the east central neighborhood of Spokane, known as Camp Hope. That camp was set up in what used to be an empty lot that is owned by the Washington Department of Transportation. And even though the camp is within city limits, the city has no power to clear it because it's not city property. For the last 10 months, Spokane has watched Camp Hope grow from tens to hundreds of people living there. Spokane Mayor Nadine Woodward says keeping up with that camp has fallen back to city responsibility.
We've stepped up to do what I believe the state should have been doing on their own property from day one.
So in early September, the city of Spokane requested that the Department of Transportation figure out a plan to remove the camp off of that WashDOT land by mid-October. Weeks later, the department responded with a scathing letter saying the city still doesn't have a solid plan to house all of the people living at the camp and that it was irresponsible to clear it without housing solutions. Mayor Nadine Woodward addressed that stall in plans, saying something needs to be done before winter.
Establishing a clear, concise, and efficient timeline is critically important to move people out of the elements and into a safe, healthy, and humane environment.
The mayor also said there is a need for more conversation before anyone moves forward. And of course, it has been a long road, and recently the continually growing numbers coming out of that encampment are prompting all sorts of questions and some proposed solutions. So we wanted to better understand, how did we get here? And for that, we have to take a look back.
Until they open up shelters, folks are going to be here. We're going to continue to take care of them.
It's hard to say exactly when Spokane's homeless crisis became a crisis, but it was back in 2018 homeless campers first set up outside of City Hall in protest. They were demanding more low-barrier shelter beds and a repeal of the city's no camping and sit-and-lie rules that prohibit sleeping on sidewalks and other public spaces. It was the first time we heard the protest called Camp Hope.
They just wanted us to pick up our stuff and go.
The tents were later removed by authorities and the campers scattered.
We're not Seattle, but we need to get a handle on the situation.
In 2019, then candidate Nadine Woodward campaigned for mayor with the message that adding more shelter bed space would not solve the problem.
But we need to get beyond just meeting basic needs and just enabling people.
But the issue continued to grow. The COVID pandemic then forced the city to open temporary shelters at the Convention Center, Spokane Arena, and the Downtown Public Library. Then by mid-2021, Spokane's Way Out shelter transitioned into a bridge housing program, ending access to more than 100 low-barrier beds.
Everyone just wants somewhere to sleep.
Again, in protest, campers set up outside of City Hall under the name Camp Hope. Authorities again cracked down, saying the camp was blocking access to the building and posed a public health threat. This time, with help from advocates at Jules Helping Hands, homeless campers then migrated to the Department of Transportation property.
And it's located right off 2nd Avenue on the north side of the freeway across from Fred Meyer.
This new version of Camp Hope continued to grow, and this time outside of the city's jurisdiction on state property. By late 2021, now Mayor Woodward conceded, proposing a new 250-bed low-barrier shelter in a warehouse on East Trent. According to the city's point-in-time count, the homeless population has jumped dramatically since 2018. 5 years ago, it was just over 1,200. Today, it's estimated there are close to 800 campers just on this DOT land along I-90 in Freya, still being called Camp Hope. Now, people living near that tent city in East Central are also growing extremely frustrated with increased crime, noise, and mess all coming from that camp. I spoke with one woman who says the homeless crisis in Spokane is becoming a crisis for her neighborhood.
Early in the morning, it is pretty disgusting when the RVs go around the block before daylight and have the valve to their sewer open to let all that sewage out as they drive around the block.
This woman lives less than a block away from what is now known as Camp Hope. She says from the day she moved in less than a year ago, she's had problems.
First week I was there, I got batteries stolen off of my vehicles. Everything's getting broken into.
But she says nothing is worse than the raw human waste that gets dumped in the streets or sometimes even in front yards.
I had an RV parked alongside my house. They just open up the valves. They let it go anywhere.
How often does that happen?
It's happening on like 2 to 3 times a week.
Wow.
Or more. But then the city has to come out and clean and spray the streets down with bleach. It's pretty disgusting. I've had people that'll just puke all over my lawn or my yard and they don't care, and I've reported it and it doesn't do a damn bit of good.
She says police do regularly patrol the area and officers have told her to report problems as often as it takes. But she tells me nothing has changed. In fact, she says it's getting worse.
The city officers babysitting from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is not enough. Because the minute that those officers leave at 7 p.m., it is fire pits, loud music, partying, a lot of traffic. Every little bit of nuisance that can go on does go on.
And she says it's time for the city and the state to do more.
I'm tired of being treated like I'm remedial or I'm a nuisance because I call so much because there's so much going on. I don't like that. I'm not going to keep doing it. I think that those people just need to move on.
In an interview with KREM 2 News back in September, Spokane Mayor Nadine Woodward said the city has spent more than $400,000 on trash removal, private security, and police overtime just to keep track and monitor Camp Hope. So why can't the city clear that land like it does with smaller camps that are set up in other places around the city? Again, it's because of where the camp sits. The Washington Department of Transportation owns lots all along the highways, and that makes it state land. Therefore, the city has no say in what happens there. When the camp first appeared in December, the city said it was WashDOT's responsibility to clear it. But WashDOT decided in January to leave the camp in place because there was not enough shelter space for those people to go to, leaving them, they said, with nowhere else to go. So DOT said it would not kick anyone out until there were more housing solutions. One of the solutions the city was hoping would give them leverage to clear the camp was the opening of a new shelter on Trent Avenue, known as the Trent Shelter. It took the city months to finally get the doors open in September. Spokane City Council approved a $6.5 million contract with the goal of moving people out of Camp Hope. So at full capacity, the city expects that shelter to grow to about 250 available beds. Still, though, it is far less than the estimated 600 to 700 people currently living at the camp. However, many of the residents from Camp Hope have made it clear they do not want to relocate to any shelter.
I don't know if anybody's seen it, but it's just kind of a bunch of tents and beds, and it looks like it's in a big warehouse surrounded by a fence. Nobody's going to go there.
So when the shelter opened its doors, it also lacked air conditioning and even indoor plumbing for people who will stay there, which I asked the mayor about during a tour of the Trent Shelter just before it opened. Do you have indoor plumbing yet?
Inside plumbing for the offices.
For the offices,
Yes.
And so not yet for showers or restrooms?
No, so you can see the porta potties right here.
Right.
There will be a dozen porta potties, 2 ADA compliant, and we will have shower trailers out here.
Is that going to be the permanent solution, or is this just a temporary?
This is just temporary.
Okay.
We are hoping that Commerce will fund restrooms that would be constructed inside, along with laundry facilities.
So as Camp Hope has grown and changed with the seasons, so have resources there at the camp. During the summer months, a cooling tent was set up against city ordinances. The Spokane Fire Marshal has asked several times that it be taken down, but as the temps have now cooled down, the tent remains. KREM 2's Janelle Finch talked with organizers about what goes on inside that tent now.
The tent went up in July to provide people living at the homeless encampment across the street a place to beat the extreme heat. Now, 2 months later, temperatures have cooled off, but the tent is still here.
This has become an operational tent, so all providers work out of this area.
Executive Director of Jules Helping Hands, Julie Garcia, says the tent has grown beyond being just a place to cool down.
What we're trying to replicate is what service would look like, say they were downtown. How do you get to the services that you need? And so this has been that kind of tent. They have to come across the street to get help. They have to come over here to get food. They have to sign up and participate to be able to access those services.
Garcia says classes like money management and employment expectations will soon be offered in the tent.
We would like to create something that teaches them how to maintain that housing once they get it, so we don't continue these hamster wheel cycles of getting housing, losing housing.
Garcia says service providers have been caught in the middle of city and state politics. She says people are losing focus of what's important for the overall well-being of our community.
I want people to stop losing focus of what we're actually trying to do here. With all this polarized politics, the city and the state, what service providers in our community are trying to do is make it better for our whole community. And we're contracted to provide a service, so we're going to continue providing that service, which is helping them get housing ready for whatever comes next.
What comes next for the people at the homeless encampment may be uncertain. But if the city doesn't get what it wants, what could be next for Jules Helping Hands is a $536 fine each day the tent is left up past Thursday.
As the city and the state work toward a joint plan to find solutions for Camp Hope, state officials also expressed concern about the Spokane County Sheriff's Office stepping in to clear the camp, and those concerns were later confirmed by the sheriff himself. Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich says he blames state and area officials for the growing situation at that homeless camp along I-90. He now says he plans to clear the camp himself by mid-October. The sheriff says clearing out the camp would involve arrests for those who do not want to go. On the other hand, his plan also includes giving each person staying at the camp a bus ticket to a different location of their choice. When asked how those bus tickets would be funded, the sheriff said he will send the bill to the Department of Commerce.
Well, there's $25 million that Lisa Brown has at her disposal. I'm going to ask Lisa for the $25 million to help resolve her mess.
The sheriff says they will be clearing out the homeless camp under abatement laws, and that means when there is a property that becomes a nuisance, law enforcement has the authority to clear it out. So to do that, Sheriff Knezovich says he plans to call on the Spokane Police Department for additional manpower. But again, since the homeless camp sits on state property within the city of Spokane, does the sheriff have jurisdiction to even clear the camp? KREM 2's Mark Hanrahan verifies.
Spokane County Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich's claim that he'll clear out the homeless camp in Spokane has raised some questions about jurisdiction. The camp near I-90 in Freya is on state-owned land within the boundaries of the city of Spokane. So we verified, does the Spokane County Sheriff have jurisdiction in the city of Spokane? Our sources are Washington State Law, the City of Seattle, and the Spokane Police Department. RCW 4752-200 addresses the question of law enforcement jurisdiction within a city or town. The law states in incorporated cities or towns, municipal police officers, the sheriff of the county, and the Washington State Patrol have independent and concurrent jurisdiction. The City of Seattle explains how this works on its website. The city writes, since Seattle is located in King County, the King County Sheriff's Office has jurisdictional authority within the city limits as well, while adding that Seattle police are considered the primary agency within the city. We also reached out to the Spokane Police Department, and Corporal Nick Briggs told us, quote, does Sheriff Knezovich have law enforcement authority within the city of Spokane? The answer is yes. So we can verify, yes, Spokane County Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich does have jurisdiction within the city of Spokane.
The sheriff initially set a goal of clearing out the camp by October 14th. He has now revised that timeline, he claims, at the request of the mayor. He says he now expects to clear out people and property at the camp sometime between October 25th and November 10th. And as the city of Spokane works to tackle this homeless crisis, other cities are also sharing their experiences in hopes that we might learn what has worked and what has not, and then be able to apply it here in Spokane. Camp Hope is beginning to make our city feel a lot more like other places like LA or Seattle, where their homeless crisis has been going on for years. Just a few months ago, I traveled to Seattle to see how they are tackling their ongoing homelessness crisis. Seattle University professor Sarah Rankin, who has studied this subject in Washington now for almost a decade, she discussed some of the solutions that Spokane will continue to seek. She says it lines up with her recent studies. You've said in the past that shelters, the big, 100, 200 bed shelters, are one of the least effective tools available to cities.
Yeah.
Do you still agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. Congregate shelters have been studied repeatedly. They have very poor performance rates in terms of making sure that people are exiting to something positive.
So she says Spokane is going to have to do more when it comes to affordable housing and mental health interventions if they truly want to solve this problem long term.
Emergency shelters, those are not long-term solutions. You can invest money in that, but don't be surprised when the problem doesn't, resolve itself. Don't be surprised when homelessness doesn't go down because you don't have exits for people who are in emergency interventions to go to.
And KREM 2 also sat down with an LA City Councilwoman to find out how LA is finding success managing their homeless crisis and what other cities like Spokane can do moving forward to help people transition out of places like Camp Hope.
But there are a number of smaller and medium-sized cities that have been able to take real steps towards addressing homelessness. And what we didn't do is something that cities who are new to the crisis of homelessness can do, which is to invest in housing and shelter early. Make sure that you're building the kinds of beds and units that can really help people move off the streets. If you are able to get more people indoors, you will see a difference on your city streets, and I think your city can see that same difference.
As Camp Hope continues to grow and impact our community, KREM 2 is committed to bringing you the very latest developments as we look for solutions. For the most up-to-date reporting, remember you can always go to our website, krem.com.